content is for informational and educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever by Draper Goren Blockchain, aka DGB, the presenter, or other associated parties for the content being provided. Please do your own due diligence and seek proper counsel.
Boom.
Well, you should probably hold Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, who would argue against such a
happy
smart
spot
comment?
Day for
Yeah.
Right. They launched. I don't think it's been mooning. Unfortunately, the spot ETF is only spot and it's not staked ETH. So if you actually understand anything about ETH, you're probably holding off for the staked ETH, in my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, what's the rumors and actually? Oh, sweet, we might have.
I'm hoping we start seeing a big sell-off of ETH. You know, buy the rumor, sell the news, and I'm hoping to see ETH dump down so I can go pick up some more.
You know, the interesting thing is, I think the biggest news should be, and we can kind of dive in and see. Sorry, I'm just texting the link to Joe and John from Lunar Crush. They might join us. Probably in like 10 minutes or so. I think the biggest news is ETH didn't pump, which is not what people would actually expect, right? I expected it to drop down, to have a dip, because it's the sell the news kind of thing. That's just historically, that's usually what happens. Is the week or two up to it, there's a lot of hype, and then the day it happens, it goes down. But what's interesting is that it didn't pump and it didn't dump either. The fact that it stayed steady is interesting. And for a second, I thought maybe that means there isn't as much interest or something in it. But I'm seeing all these tweets out there talking about historic numbers, talking about like hundreds of millions of dollars in the first hour kind of thing.
It's all these Solana maxis talking about Solana. They just keep going on about the meme coins on Solana and how they're buying meme coins. And so, you know, it's.
I know, but if you just if you look up, you know, reputable people talking about the ETH ETF, you're seeing at least what people are saying. Like people were sharing like a video where the BlackRock people are explaining the ETF, and then people are sharing, you know, what they expect to see on numbers. And somebody's saying in the first 15 minutes of trading, there was over $112 million or something like that in volume. And according to Bloomberg and some things like that. And that was hours ago. Now I'm sure things have changed. Okay, senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg. Halftime, nearly $600 million so far, putting them on pace to hit $1 billion and change by end of day, which would be 20% of what the Bitcoin ETFs did on day one.
Okay.
Which is insanity, right? Because that is the biggest. The Bitcoin one was the biggest ETF, you know, launch ever. The fact that they could hit 600 million in half a day is wild, and the price is not.
My buddy was telling me, and you had to verify this, but my buddy was telling me that the Grayscale ETH Trust was actually going to charge a fee for liquidating or selling out because they had so many people selling their
so they're trying to lock people in. So instead of lowering the fee to just be competitive with everyone else and forcing everyone to stay, they put like
that's what I heard. I'd have to confirm that. I'm like, I didn't care because I don't own any, but my buddy owned a whole bunch, and he's like, dude, he's like, I think I should sell off before the date because I hear that they're going to charge a fee if I sell after the ETFs open because they don't want people switching over.
Well, with Bitcoin, I think there were more wild.
No, I think they needed this. Like,
but I think with Bitcoin, the people that were in Grayscale had been locked in for a really long time, and there were these weird arbitrage opportunities over time where if you bought a certain amount, you got like a discount, and there were some ways to get in where you basically buy into the ETF for lower than market price of Bitcoin. But most of the people, because of Bitcoin's price movement and trajectory based on the timing and stuff, were like upside down. on their Bitcoin. And so there were like some tax benefits and reasons to sell. Plus, they just didn't have good liquidity or something for a certain period of time. So they were going to sell. But the issue was, if you were planning on keeping it in an ETF, all of the rest of the ETFs were charging less fees. Grayscale was hoping or banking on like people just leaving it there and just going, oh, the hassle of moving because of the fees. And people moved it because part of what makes the ETF good in a lot of people's opinions that it's very liquid and easy to transfer between. Just go into your Schwab account, sell one thing, go buy another thing. Like, so it's it just.
And I can't find the conclusion or figure out where he saw that from, but that was what I heard. Post waiver fee.
Lots of rumors floating around. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised.
Due diligence. I don't know if that's the post waiver fee he was talking about or what, but I mean, here's the thing. No matter what, if you're in TradFi, if
thanks, Yitzy.
if you're in TradFi and you have no exposure to ETH, the ETF is probably the best way to get exposure for those people. If you have like a Roth IRA, you want to put.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, in like your retirement account or something like that. But it still is, to me, it seems insane to buy like a derivative of a product or like a thing, a version of a product where you're paying a fee on it, where you could just go buy it.
Especially when there's an inflation rate about like 2.5 to 3.5. I think it's like 3.5% is what ETH is paying right now if you stake it. And so essentially, if you're holding ETH in this ETF, you're being diluted by that 3.5% inflation. And so it really makes more sense for there to be an ETH ETF that's staked, like for staked ETH, right? Otherwise, you might as well just go buy ETH on something like Coinbase. And
what's the reasons they're not approving that? Is that it's just because it's like is there different rules and regulations in ETFs that can, where you can earn interest or something? Is ETF supposed to be kind of like a fixed price?
Probably some archaic rule, just like so many that we just need to like abolish and start over on.
I mean, but here's the thing, is the fact that oh dang, sorry, kid showing me something. The idea though that these ETFs are necessary are also funny to me. But I understand you have your normal financial institution where you keep your money, you have it in retirement accounts, certain things. So you're not as free to move it around, but it's insane that you're not free to move it around also, right? Well,
people have become used to not actually owning the assets anymore. They just want price exposure, right? Yeah. They got this temporary high. They just want to make more dollars. And when you're in the crypto space long enough, you're like, I don't want the dollars. I want assets, and I want to self-custody those assets.
And I don't trust, and I don't trust somebody else.
I don't trust, I mean, we don't even own our property. We don't have a loyal title. We have, like a contract.
I played Monopoly with my son yesterday, and like we mortgage properties and things. And I made some comment. I was like, oh, bummer, I can't charge you the double, like the higher rent because I mortgaged one of the properties in the color set. And he's like, that's because the bank owns it now. And I was like, the bank owns everything. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I still make a payment on my car. Bank owns it. Still make payment on our place. Bank owns it. It's our choice. I could choose to do whatever, but interest rates and certain things, there's all these, right?
The secret is that on your property, the state owns it. And the reason is once you paid the bank off on your house, if you stop paying your taxes on your house, the state will take your house.
Yes. It's various degrees of
they ownership. Haven't gone to Bitcoin yet.
Well, no, I mean, technically, if you don't pay your taxes and don't follow the rules and you're a criminal or whatever or whatever, they can seize it just like any other asset you have.
Or they can put you in jail. It's a little more stringent, but
yeah, well, I'm saying you may have more of a choice with Bitcoin because you could, not give up custody, but they, will force you or
prison.
Right, exactly. So there's your choice. I don't think that just
they'll make an example out of you for life.
It's pretty wild. So something we talked about earlier while we were just setting up, and we haven't talked about the ETF yet. Maybe we'll wait a minute in case the Lunar guys join, just to before I bring up an ETH chart that I think is interesting for Lunar Crush. But you know, about a third of adults in the United States own crypto now.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane to think about when we when we're when it's a little less than a third of the total population of US people that hold crypto, but it's more than a third if you count only adults. And I'm assuming you can't really hold crypto anywhere unless you're an adult or you lie and say that you're an adult, right? Like, so I'd say about a third of the adults hold crypto. So we're in this place where people still, I think, at least in the traditional regular world, are talking about it like it's a weird thing. Only really talk about Bitcoin and a little bit of Ethereum now, probably a little more. Once some news gets out, it's kind of crazy to think about this thing that to most people, most of our friends and people around us or whatever, still think of us as being in this weird industry that's like whatever, but it's a third, right? It's like how many, even think about the biggest things in our society, like I don't know, baseball. How many people watched a baseball game in the United States in the last year? Is it a third of the country?
And it's like these hidden cult, like you don't want to tell people publicly because you're kind of embarrassed about it. But when you find your group of friends, you're like, dude, yes.
Well, I think that's a part of it. It must be so many people we know have it, right? Have a little bit on Coinbase or have some ETF exposure, some kind of something. And nobody wants to talk about it because they're afraid the person they're talking to is going to go, you bought Bitcoin? But obviously they did. It's a third of the freaking country. It's
like Fight Club. It's like Fight Club. You don't tell people you're in Fight Club when you're in Fight Club.
It's a little bit. Although I don't know if that's like out of like embarrassment or shame.
Depends on what meme coin you hold, right? And what the price is.
I guess it's just weird though to think about because people think of it as like a non-issue. I think that we live on like crypto Twitter, right? And here's a thing that I think is also funny. People think that this small minority of people on like crypto Twitter and whatever are a meaningful group. Like they think of them as the leaders in our industry and things like that. And some people are because they're, the founders of big exchanges, or they do have some meaningful stuff. But some people are just popular for having opinions, and people think that what they say and how they act is important and is indicative of the industry, and people be mad that they spoke this way or that way because, oh my gosh, you're making our industry look like crazy or whatever. But if you think about the fact that how many people are actually interacting on crypto Twitter, it's got to be maybe tens of thousands, right? And then there's 90 something million Americans, not worldwide, but just Americans that own crypto. And you realize, oh, this is nonsense. This is us arguing amongst each other. You can never show up. You can never pay attention, and it wouldn't matter.
But of the 35%,
we don't matter.
of the 35%, how many of them are profitable? Right.
No idea. And also, here's the thing though. I was going to say who has a meaningful amount of money, but what was the stats? We got to look it up. What percentage of Americans do not have enough money to like change the tires on their car if an emergency happened tomorrow, right? So most of Americans are in debt. So the fact that they own any amount of crypto means it's a meaningful amount of crypto. Oh, we got John.
Good morning, John.
What's up, guys?
What's happening?
Alon, David, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Great to see you. So we were about to talk about like Bitcoin ETF stuff, and then I actually had the Ethereum Lunar Crush chart open in a tab I was going to show, and then when you said, "Yeah, pop in 10 minutes, I didn't bring it up. But what we were just talking about is the significance or insignificance of the fact that 1/3 of Americans hold crypto, right? 90 something million Americans hold crypto. So if you compare that to adults, that's over 1/3. If you do a whole population, it's slightly under 1/3, right? But that's a meaningful amount. And then I use that to mention how insignificant the ridiculousness of crypto Twitter is. Like, we in our industry will be like, oh my gosh, this guy said this thing, he's going to make us look like idiots, or this guy said this thing, he's very important. The most of it is nonsense. Like, it's not even a blip on the radar. You actually might have better, you for sure have better insight into actually how important it is. I know it does move markets in some meaningful ways, but like, to the average person, like if I went to one of my friends who I know, went to the army, very normal dude, owns some crypto, he mentioned to me at some point, but we never really talk about it. He just has a Coinbase account, right? If I talk to him and be like, yeah, but did you see what Eric Voorhees said about whatever? Although I mentioned to Rankin, he's one of my favorite people, like, for a lot of reasons. He's solid. He's not one of the goofballs, but does it matter at all to anyone what most of us say? I think a critical mass has to think what I say is important and do something or act on it. But like, there's very few, like maybe like the Wall Street Bets guy and a couple other people that are influential enough to actually do something really big. I don't know. Going down this rabbit hole.
I think so. Are you asking how important crypto Twitter is towards the space, or towards price moves, or towards strategy?
I guess that's where my thinking out loud went. So I'd like to get your opinion, but also just how insane is it that the media doesn't cover crypto very much? People think of it as this underground thing. People are a little bit embarrassed, like Rank and I were talking about before you came on, to talk about it, but 1/3 of us haven't, right? It's like, we don't talk about it. They talk about, crypto like it's a joke, like it's a thing. But in a world, like I said, where most Americans are in debt and can't afford an emergency situation, but 1/3 of them hold crypto, that's crazy meaningful. Like, that makes it more meaningful than anyone is giving it credit to be, right? Imagine if 1/3 of the people owned, a tech stock, right? I don't think 1/3 of Americans own a tech stock. Do they?
What's even more meaningful is that when you think of the people that are really into crypto, and I don't mean dabbling, the people that are really in it, like you guys, you're way into this. I don't know what your bank accounts look like, but your savings account is your crypto. And
100%.
it's like if you have extra money, are you stacking it in Bank of America in your savings account? You're not. You're adding to ETH. You're probably adding to Tezos, Alon. Like, you're adding across the board because you see a greater upside. And I think it's interesting to kind of like, staring at social media data for crypto for, I don't know, years now. I'd say like I'll share a little bit of what I've observed, which is like, when you run into people that are in Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, maybe even Solana at this point, it's, I don't want to call it low risk, but in terms
I'm getting texts saying sick burn for you just mentioning Tezos at me earlier. How dare all of you? Sorry.
That's not a bird. It's not a bird. It's great. When you look at the people that are just sort of stacking and adding, like, people that are adding 0.01 ETH every day, or 0.001 ETH every day, they're not trading, they're just adding, they're building a base, they're building a long-term position. Same thing with Bitcoin. You're stacking sats, you got your automatic investing on, you're just sort of keeping your day job, you're working. This is your savings account. It's not your checking account, it's your savings account. Is there a lot of social activity around Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, which has, by the way, typically lately, Solana's had more social activity than Ethereum. So when you play that out, yes, there's a lot of chatter, and yes, it's great to follow along with those. But I kind of look at it as those are, if you had a portfolio allocation, that's your biggest allocation. That's your, where you're trading, that's where it ends up. It somehow ends up back in Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe a few other main layer ones or whatever, right? Maybe even some Tether along in there and getting some yield on that or something. But like it's when you go down the risk profile that you start to see things really matter a ton on social. You start to see like many different behaviors that where social literally drives it all. I can assure you that Boden, BODEN, the token Boden, which fell, what was it, 80% yesterday, and it's up 150% today because rumors of Biden not being alive. Hey, that's bullish. Like crazy, right?
It's weird,
but
just
like,
nonsensical meme coin stuff.
There's no like store of value, scarce resource. There's no utility. This part of this, it is social narratives. Period. When we see like lately the tokens that have been moving up, and by the way, social activity for Bitcoin, nope, still not up.
Here, I'll bring this up while you're talking. Let's see how we can share. Wait, share screen. Okay, good. I'm figuring out which tab. So just wanted to just show, right? Because I have Ethereum up. I can switch to Bitcoin, but what I was trying to see is I was just going like, 1 week to compare the number of creators talking about Ethereum, versus price. But here you go, like a month would be a little easier to see the difference, right? But if you see creators posting, it's a lot more today now because of the ETF. But you start zooming out and you're going, a lot more people. Okay, in May we're talking about it. That was that Bitcoin ETF time?
A lot of that's
right?
with January. Zoom out a little further, go to 1 year and look at interactions. Just zoom out on interactions.
So interactions
right.
was, we go October, right? Oh no, that was October of last October. There's spikes,
yes.
right? But look at just the numbers. You would expect that today, being record ETF day, right? $600 million in the half day mark in volume in Ethereum ETF, and the price didn't really change, and nobody's talking about it. And here's where I was going at with the discussion about the here's up so I can see you guys again, and then we'll get back to any charts you want to see. Here's what I'm saying is I just looked it up, and it's somewhere around half of Americans own stocks, right? A third own crypto. Those stocks exist in a lot of us never bought actual stocks. We just have a 401k plan or whatever through work, and it goes into some Fidelity, whatever.
Do they actually own stocks, or they just own exposure?
So I assume it's any kind of exposure gets you on that list. So if you think about that, even if half of the people were active, right, actually active in like, buying these stocks versus like a 401k or whatever, if a third of us are participating in crypto, that's freaking insane and astronomical. And so, compare the amount of time spent discussing the S&P 500 versus the crypto market. It's kind of it's even more exaggerated. To me, that makes an opportunity right now, because at some point things got to catch up. And what does that mean? I don't even know. Could be an opportunity in both directions, but I feel like once it moves, right? Like, I don't know. It just seems wildly insane to me.
The lines are blurred. Today is the best example of it. We've got Ethereum ETFs launching, and if anyone thinks that, okay, that's it, we're done, they're crazy. Like quite literally, can you imagine what's about to happen? And like the difference between a stock investor and a crypto investor at this point is what exactly? Like if I can buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin, it's probably a better option if I'm willing to custody it. Most aren't.
these people who are buying it are buying it and hodling it. They don't even realize things like DeFi where they can actually earn yield on this stuff. I mean, like you talk about people buying Bitcoin and ETH, like you can earn Bitcoin and ETH. And
You know, when I think, when it takes, when the DeFi and yield generating products, even ones that are not self custody, but there will be, there's always some. Coinbase has done it, for example, but they're only going to do it with certain things. They're under a microscope. But like, for example, Return allows you to get like DeFi yield, but allow it to be custodied in a different place, or allows you, depending on how you do it, right? There's products that allow for that. When interest rates finally go down and your savings account at US Bank can't give you 4%, which, if you're at Bank of America or Wells Fargo, they're still not even giving you 0.5%. But there are savings places. You go to bankrate.com, find a savings account that'll give you 4 or 5%. When that no longer exists and people realize that they could hold USDC or Tether and earn 4 or 5 or more percent at a time when there's no interest rates happening, that's when I think the volumes can go. Or if enough people are bullish about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and realize they can earn interest on that, there's going to be non-custodial and custodial solutions for things like that. And well, there already are non-custodial. We all participate in it. But I think that's when the third of Americans that hold crypto go, wait, my crypto can earn me more than my bank account, or than my savings account, more than the CD, the person at the bank is calling me to sell. Which, by the way, the fact that somebody is picking up the phone calling it to sell you means that it's not efficient as the DeFi products. Like, that person has to get paid out of the fees before you make any interest. So there's going to be better, more efficient products. Plus, the banks and institutions are adopting this technology to supplement their existing stuff. So the worst thing that will happen is that you're going to get competitive products from the banks, even if they're not as good, or if they're not self-custody or whatever.
Agreed. I mean, it's an interesting thing where we've got ETFs that are buying hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, for one, I'd like to know, how are they buying hundreds of millions of dollars? And like yesterday, BlackRock, how are they not moving the market?
OTC.
And
OTC,
well,
it has to catch up at some point. And what we've seen all year is we've seen the number of Bitcoin on exchanges falling drastically, and that number still includes what is being stored on Coinbase for the ETFs. So what's interesting is that, when you zoom out, like, what's the biggest issue? I mean, custody is a bit of a concern. Why does Coinbase have so much of all this Bitcoin and all this ETH? They're storing all of this for a lot of these ETFs. That's a challenge. But the bigger thing is, like, there aren't enough on-chain reporting requirements. And so I want to know, if there was $600 million in volume so far, how much of that is actually like being held by the market? Because volume is not a measurement of anyone holding anything, right? Like, there's all sorts of arbitrage bots and things that exist that can create tens of millions, hundreds of millions in volume, but have nobody. It could, it's just being shuffled from place to place, right? How many people are hedge funds just trying to get some fraction of a percent of yield from the volatility? And is that part of the volume?
Not just that. It's like, okay, so no, there's Ethereum ETFs. You can't, staking's not part of these ETFs, right? Yeah. So technically that's bad for the network, because is Ethereum just sitting there unstaked on a massive scale? Or is the Ethereum going to be staked? It just can't be included as part of the yield of the fund.
No, the thing, John, this is actually good for the network because it's less inflation. Less people staking means
less on the market, but it's just sitting there. It's sitting there unstaked.
It's locked up, yeah. Which is good for price. I mean, it's good for price if you don't mind, like, congestion and cost of working on the chain going up, which sucks. Just make it more.
And how much is not just, we need more on-chain reporting, but how much is being moved on-chain versus through these centralized sources and things like that? Is it just, are we changing, is most of this just accounting on the Coinbase level, staying in the same Coinbase custody solution, or is it actually moving? Because the movement is important to the infrastructure of the network, is important to keeping things going, and you
is it
can't
being
generate
staked?
that yield for the stakers if nothing's happening on chain.
I know.
Or is it actually being staked and we don't know it? And there's yield
And
coming back.
somebody else is owning the yield, right? Why doesn't that would be interesting? Can they legally stake it if you're the ETF administrator? And if you can, how come there isn't a no fee, completely free Ethereum ETF that sucks up the volume? Because think about GBTC lost a lot of their assets because they charged the highest fees, and people just moved to lower.
If they're staking it, though, they should disclose that. There should be some type of disclosure if they're actually staking.
But would you give a crap if you're the average person wanting to get into it? If there was, go to BlackRock and pay 1%. I don't know what
because there is,
or go to Grayscale and pay 0%, but Grayscale is staking it. You're getting the same thing. One, you're not paying a fee. The other,
but you have the risk of slashing, so you'd have to disclose that likely in your documents.
I'm sure they would have to disclose everything, but I'm saying the person.
No,
if my brother is administering people's retirement accounts and decides to tell his clients, suggest everyone should do 5% in
right,
Bitcoin
and there's zero
Ethereum,
fees. Give us 0 fees, but they make the yield on the staking. Yeah, why not?
Correct. It feels like that you'd say that's inevitable, except the rules aren't allowing them apparently to do this.
But I'm assuming there's going to be like weird leveraged ETFs and more weird ETFs as things go, because they exist for other markets, right? So there's no reason why it wouldn't exist for these.
There's so many interesting things. I mean, we've now said, oh, there's Bitcoin ETFs. I think we're going to get to this. Bitcoin is a part of many, many other combinations of ETFs where, it might represent 3%, 5%, 10% of lots of different diversified funds that maybe it's their only crypto investment. Maybe they're a little Bitcoin and Ethereum and 90% stocks. There's going to be all sorts of combinations.
Yeah, all of these mutual funds that exist, people's retirement accounts. I remember my first job, my brother told me, put it into some mutual fund. He said, you're young, put it in the risky one. And I remember I think it was when I worked at Union Bank. I was literally making like $7 an hour, $8 an hour as a teller. I maybe put in my retirement account over the months I worked there, like a couple $100. And I remember it like I was in the risky one. So I made like a little money. Like I took $200 and got $300. I don't know what it was, right? But at that time, that was the risky move. Now, every one of those kinds of mutual funds that exist for everyone should have, well, we think it should have, but I think people are saying out loud, people from BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and Fidelity are saying, 1%, 5%, 10%, whatever it is, right? Let's say the least risky one puts 1% Bitcoin exposure. The most risky one puts 7% Bitcoin exposure. Whatever the strategy and the profile is, those add up to probably trillions of dollars, right? Like when you start to take every 401k, mutual fund bucket across the world, right? Not even across the country. And they're not going to be self-custodying it or buying it on an exchange directly. They're going to probably use one of these ETFs, right? And so that's where I think, right, that the tides shift or change in some meaningful way.
I mean, just think about it, though. We are on the low end of the risk curve here. Like when we're talking about crypto ETFs, like we are literally what I was saying before, like you can buy some Bitcoin and Ethereum and you just you do an automatic recurring, purchase program every day, every week. And you just kind of, oh yeah, I'm doing that. You just kind of like, you become that person that goes, oh yeah, I own some crypto. Like you're not in it. Where this gets really, really crazy is when we get a little lower in this funnel of risk. People willing to take a bit more risk Maybe
But
not
they're
like
watching it every day.
crazy,
They're paying attention and caring.
right? Right. And maybe part of those funds, maybe they're mainly Bitcoin and Ethereum, but maybe it's like an AI fund, for example, right?
Yeah.
A decentralized AI ETF. Imagine, and that sounds far-fetched, but not as far-fetched as even a Bitcoin or Ethereum ETF.
There's
not that
lots of
long ago.
automated,
Like,
there's lots of automated trading strategies, right, that exist, or like
right.
funds that rebalance for, yeah, what up, Coop?
Liquidity pools that rebalance.
It's been a while. Coop is
I love
OG friend.
I love showing people who have money how you can buy ETH and borrow against it at 0% interest.
The idea that you go, if you're if you're willing to be over over collateralized, the fact that you could borrow against ETH with a single tiny fee with no interest and no time lock and no whatever should like just break people's brains, because that's essentially what efficient markets can do. And the fact that banks will never be able to compete with that. There's just way too much overhead.
I was showing a guy last night. This guy was in the construction industry, so he knows the pain points of getting a loan. And we were discussing ETH, and I was like, look, if you had 100 ETH, you throw 100 ETH in this protocol, and you could borrow 50 grand, and it costs you like $470. And then you can pay it back whenever you want because there's no payment terms. And it's a decentralized protocol, and it's immutable. And I'm like, to me, this is the most awesome technology. And he's like, that's pretty cool. Like... And then
is this like a liquid staking, or like is this like liquid staking or something like that? No, this is just
staking, just staking your ETH and borrowing against ETH. Now, and they're starting, we're going to see liquid staking versions of this. There's another version that's going to be where you're going to have adjustable interest rates where you adjust the interest rate that you're willing to pay. And that will decrease or increase your risk ratio, right? And so you get to manage your own risk ratio based off the interest you're willing to pay. And like these technologies are like revolutionary. And besides with that, along with like providing LP, like why would you want to be doing anything else? Like in my opinion, like every stock should be tokenized and in a liquidity pool at some point. And I mean, like, and the thing is like, well, somebody was going, well, what about bots and how does this stuff all get managed? And it was fun because there was a liquidity pool that was completely imbalanced, right? And I knew that I would be arbitrage and I would lose money by depositing funds in this, but I wanted to see how fast it would happen, right? So I put like $15 within minutes, within less than a minute, it rebalanced. I lost $6 because of the fees of the transactions, but the pool had rebalanced itself. Some bot had saw the arbitrage trade and instantly rebalanced. And so you realize how fast liquidity is literally moving through this space. And it's an amazing thought process. Like this is a true open market economy, like when it comes to in crypto and DeFi. Like, we don't have switches. We don't have the switches. Oh my God, things dropping. Let's turn off the switch and stop the market. We don't have that. We have liquidity, and liquidity will rebalance itself, which is beautiful.
It just implies there is liquidity, and if you think about those, liquidity is such an isolated thing per chain, per application, per ecosystem. Like there's all these promising chains out there that have, like, when you actually just look closely, there's no liquidity. There's no volume. Was that?
Where's the TVL? Show me where the TVL is. That total value.
It's not there.
It's not. And the problem is when they try to talk volume and things like that, it's again what we were talking about before. It could be wash trading, it could be bots and things. And so those numbers are very easily very, very high. But it's hard to it is hard to judge until you start looking underneath.
I'm always fascinated by new things that creep up that just immediately generate liquidity. Like look at runes. Not smooth. It's a whole new thing, right? Yeah. BRC20s was a whole new thing. Like, I'm just impressed how like you go from a literal thing that doesn't exist with zero liquidity to all of a sudden it just grows out of organic demand. That's just fascinating. Like that's super cool to see versus like a new chain that comes out that promises to be the greatest blockchain ever in history, and it's trying, and 2-3 years later, where where is it? What's going on?
That's also traditional startup world, right? And
Right.
I think the flip side of transparency and liquidity and tokenization of stuff, right? Like actually like banking on a idea, but actually having liquidity on that. The flip side of how rad that is how horrible it can be, because any person who's ever run a startup knows that from month to month, from day to day, you can go from feeling like you're going to conquer the world to feeling like, oh shit, we might go out of business. And that's just normal, because the earlier you are in a startup's trajectory, especially in a market like ours where there's so many things outside our control on an individual company level, you know, it's the normal roller coaster ride of starting a business, starting a company. Now, let's say you raised all of your money up front instead of doing it in tranches over time. You had all of your dilution up front instead of doing it over time and all
Right.
that stuff. You add so much complexity. You make it so much harder to run your business, because you also have set yourself on a path that you could have been wrong about, and it's much harder to go to uh, thousands of investors and say, you know what, we were wrong. We want to go this way. Want to go this way, or we want to still attack the same problem. We have a different thing. And if you have a small group of investors who are professional investors, and you go, okay, we're going to go raise our next round, but we learned from our mistakes, we're going to go this way instead. That's a normal, easy conversation to have. To go to a big community of crypto people and say, you know what, we were wrong, we're gonna go to proof of stake instead. People lose their fucking minds and go, wait, that's not what I backed. And they're also, you know, you can't really do that. Like, so what I'm saying is that also in those moments where you're feeling like, oh shit, we're going to go out of business, in the normal world, nothing is liquid. You literally you just get shit done, or you go out of business, right? In the crypto world, you go, oh shit, it's gonna hit the fan, it's not working out. Everyone dumps, or even team members dump and flee. Like there's just the liquidity adds this added crazy pressure to what you're doing that is not natural in the startup world, or maybe is natural but hasn't been the way it's been done for so many years.
Well,
And
let's flip that around.
Yeah.
Let's flip that. Let's go upside down with that. Someone with a great idea and the liquidity is not there. And so if the liquidity is not there, and it may not even be their fault, it might even be the chain they're on.
Yeah.
And so you get into this world of like, wait, great idea. There is no way to execute that on that chain. There's no way that that's going to fly. No one's going to use it. You don't have adoption. And if we're talking normal business world here, that's just a crypto oriented business, they're out of business because there's no revenue coming in.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, the idea of even revenue for a lot of people in our industry is non-existent, right? They're focusing on maybe the token economics, or we're going to do another drop and bring in money. I mean, that's actually revenue, and that actually
they're just in the wrong protocol.
But
right.
But what's crazy is that I saw something like a report from a few months back from somebody who was very smart and forward looking, basically talking about how, hey, in the traditional VC world, money is going to dry up because of the economy and certain things. And companies who can generate revenue will be at a premium, because companies who don't generate revenue are not going to be able to fundraise, or it's going to be much, much harder. And a lot of companies will go out of business. And so people were thinking about, how do we create business models that generate revenue, keep companies alive, and actually build more sustainable businesses. And it's people don't really do that a lot in our space, or are building things for idealistic reasons. Or here's the thing, in the business world all the time, people lose who have the better products, because it's not just about having the best product. It's about actually being able to sell that product, or timing, or taking an incumbent who has a worse product and being able to steal their customers. It doesn't always work. Like the best way I like to tell people is, go ask like a really great engineer what the best programming language is, right? and then go ask another engineer who you think is great what the best programming language. They'll argue about them, but then ask them what they're actually using and why, and all of the answers will be different. John might think that one language is better. I might think another language is better, and then Rankin might think a third language better, and then all three of us might be actually programming in a completely different language. And the reasons you do them exist for business reasons, for all sorts of reasons, right? Like a lot of open source stacks that most people think are the potentially the best ones aren't used by the enterprise because somebody at JP Morgan needs to pick up the phone and be able to call somebody at Microsoft if shit's broken or if they need help. You can't do that on an open source stack. What are you going to go into the message boards and find, Ruby developer 123 and go, hey bro, can you hook it up? I need your help. Like, so even if we think Ethereum is better than Bitcoin for technical reasons, or Solana is better than Ethereum, or Tezos is better than all of them, if you can't get the right adoption for the right reasons, or let's say one of them are incompatible with iOS, and iOS is in everyone's hands, and Apple won the hardware game, and guess what? The better programming language only works on Android phones. Well, then you're fucked. It doesn't matter. Like it's irrelevant. The same thing is happening across, like what John was saying. You could build the greatest product in crypto, but you might have bet on Solana. And
I think there's something else
or whatever
that's so interesting that's happening right now. And I mean, we've talked to several real world asset projects lately.
Yeah.
We've had some live streams lately. We had Mantra on last week. It was great. And there's some interesting things going on because, like, look historically at crypto, what's happened. We've been stoked to put a JPEG on chain, right? We've been stoked to just like launch anything, and look what I did. I built the 39,000th DeFi application. Look at that. Like it's been experimental. It's been light. It's been, look, this is a proof of concept. And now because we made that proof of concept work, we can do it for this like much bigger use case. We talk about real world assets. Like think about like your house. Think about your house. And everyone goes, well, why can't I buy a house online? Why do I need all these third parties involved? Why is everyone taking a rip? Why do I need a realtor? Why do I need escrow? Why do I need the city to do this and that and review this and that? And right. So like, and then your paperwork and deed, everything's everywhere, right?
And to borrow against it, you still have to hop on the phone and talk to a person and spend all this time. None of it makes sense.
But to disrupt that with blockchain, I mean, even if you have a permissionless blockchain, you need permissioned applications that, hey, dude, you lost your key. Oh, you got hacked. Your house didn't get hacked and lost. Someone else doesn't own your house.
Yeah.
And like, as we're sitting here experimenting with these humongous real world use cases, like we have to remember that like that's happening right now rapidly. But if that works, it needs to sit there for potentially hundreds of years. This isn't oh dude, we made it work, and our country then outlawed that thing working, and oh wait, the chain is down, oops, didn't scale enough. Like none of this can happen. It needs to really damn work, and it needs to work again flawlessly for generations.
And here's why
your house is now on chain.
Yeah. And here's why it's coming, right? Here's where it gets really, really, really interesting, in my opinion. I've like touched on some of this. But by the way, I'm going to say something. I think that after this summer, going into the fall, sometime around October, and then after into November, we're going to see like insane shifts of those real world assets actually being traded for the first time. It's actually going to be liquidity. I have some selfish reasons why I think that's happening, but here's why I know it's going to happen, and it's a matter of time. You see the banks participated in the Bitcoin ETFs, record numbers, a shit ton of revenue and fees to the banks, right? Now, the banks have all of these public assets, right? They have all of these. Someone's at the door.
Banks are institutions.
Okay, hold on one second.
Banks are institutions.
Okay, institutions and banks. Guys, give me one quick second. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna finish my feelings on this.
Sure.
Listen, kids, I understand how it is. You have
Amazing.
any kids yet, John?
Oh yeah, mine are old. Mine are adults. Yeah,
Adults?
they're good.
Yeah.
They're good. Yeah, one is actually helping us with he's interning for the summer even.
Nice. That's the
So
perfect thing to do with it. No,
we've
you
got
know,
two amazing interns. We're gonna grow the team. It's gonna be good.
nice. I'm putting a kid through college for computer science, and you know, as we're talking of this, I think the real alpha is potentially becoming a plumber over the next decade.
So
As everybody feels
disagree.
code eventually, right? All you need is some chat GPT.
So here's what I want to say before we kind of conclude, and then I want to get an opinion on John about something. But when John mentioned his home. Every one of us has a version of that, right? Or have where we live, or have our cars, have some big meaningful assets, or at least our parents do, or we've chosen to rent instead, whatever. But we interact with these things. Now, going beyond that, the banks and institutions already kind of own that market. They're going to start to lose it, but they're going to need to hold on to it. So they're going to innovate to hold on to that, because they are already the ones who sell us the mortgages. They're already the ones who sell us the seconds. They're already the ones who are selling us insurance on that. That's one category. And we actually in DGB have a few companies that are specifically attacking that category. And we're going to hear about it soon. And from appraisals on homes to the mortgages and everything, right? It needs to be digital. It needs to be real time. And it will also need to be recorded on chain so that we can trust and verify it. Now, the next thing, if you think about, and inflation numbers are going to make this much, much, much bigger. But if you're some super high roller like John, you could call up your banker and you can go, hey, I want to do this big transaction. I have all these assets in the private market that might be real estate investments in startups, investments in companies. Here are all of my assets. I'm going to show it to you because I'm so wealthy. I have a private banker and I want to borrow, $500K from the bank and some secured, unsecured, whatever. They'll look at my assets. They'll give me a loan, right? Because they go, hey, this guy has it. And the alternative investment space in the United States alone, right? The ones that aren't public companies, that aren't instantly liquid and stuff like that, pre all of these inflation numbers was something like $7 trillion a year. Now, a big percent of that is with that top 1% of people who can talk to their banks and whatever and get it. But if your parents own some real estate and you own something else, and John is owner of Lunar Crush and whatever, those assets are not liquid. Those assets are on paper, and a bank and institution can't afford to give you a loan against them because of the time it takes the bankers and people, right? It's just too much. But if you think about how much revenue it unlocks for them, if those things, at least some of the low-hanging fruit, like real estate and some of the others, can be verified digitally in terms of value, even if they don't trust the value completely and they make you over collateralize it or whatever, they'll be able to instantly provide services to you and lend you more capital based on that. And if you say $7 trillion alternative investment market in the United States, that means billions and billions of dollars of instant revenue opportunities for every financial institution in this country that has some meaningful market share. The second they adopt digitized assets or real world assets or tokenized assets, whatever they want to call it, right? And every single one of them is starting to explore that. And the key to unlock that in a meaningful way is not just doing it. That's one part, right? But I'm not doing it and the bank's not doing it until there's interoperability. Because just like in the public stock world, when I live in my Schwab account, I'm using technology and APIs and clearing houses to buy and sell my shares of stock. Schwab or most financial institutions are not the ones who handle that liquidity, aren't calling up David at the other bank and saying, hey, my client wants to buy shares, your client is holding those shares, all those things. So the second there's interoperability across these layers and instant settlement or close to instant settlement, that's when it unlocks. And
We have the
that's
same
what's
issues
happening
though.
now.
TradFi.
What?
You can't move your funds is super easy from Schwab to Robinhood. It's two different accounts. It's just like two different
Correct.
chains.
But I'm talking about the asset itself. You
Yeah.
could buy a share of Tesla in Schwab and you buy a share of Tesla in Robinhood. Now,
Yes.
in the RWA world, that's the current the current buzzword, but in this tokenized
Please
assets
change the
world,
term.
in this digital asset world, right? I cannot buy a share of a tokenized asset in different financial institutions that might be tied to different chains. My asset is on a single chain, held and owned and run and operated by a single financial institution. And there's some exceptions to that, but there isn't real interoperability in the same way. And that's being built right now. And until that happens, you're making your asset harder to trade. If I own a piece of real estate, there's already an industry that exists to help me sell it to you, right? Or even sell you a portion or sell it to a bank. But for me to tell you, hey, to buy my piece of real estate, go to Open Finance, make sure you create an account on this chain, make sure then you transfer your US dollars from your Schwab account to the Open Finance account, then you can buy it from me. That's way worse. That's digitizing it, making the product harder for you to actually trade. But when Open Finance connects to an interoperability layer, and Schwab is connected to that same interoperability layer, then all of a sudden me, a Schwab account holder, can buy the share directly from another person who has a account at another financial institution on another chain. The second I can do that matchmaking, and because the two financial institutions trust each other, trust the KYC, and are regulated, can make that trade, it's game over. And that's what's starting to happen, right? It's starting to happen in small ways. Like Archax has the BlackRock ETF, has one of the BlackRock funds or mutual funds or things like that. It's actually on Hashgraph. That's where it's tokenized on Hedera. I don't think anyone says Hashgraph anymore. It's on Hedera.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the interoperability layer, you can buy it from other financial institutions through that connectivity. But these, as much as I love Archax and they're awesome and ahead of the curve and they're one of the first tokenized funds, they're a small player so far. But if I'm a part of the London Stock Exchange group in the private markets account there and I could do it from that account, that's special. I don't have to move my money to a new place. And that's what we need it to do for it to actually be efficient. That's happening. Those are some of those announcements I know are happening in October with a few of the world's largest financial institutions that are going to actually take like these proof of concept RWAs to actually be meaningful in production. And I think that's really, really rad. Guys, we're over time. My explanation was way longer and I talked way too much. But John, I wanted any last final thoughts, especially on Ethereum ETF day and what you're pumped about.
I mean, I'm about to head to Nashville, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun week of Bitcoin talk. I think we're going to not just Bitcoin 2024. We're going to go to the Bitcoin Builders Conference. We got a bunch of stuff going on, so it's going to be really exciting. So big week there. I'm excited about the Ethereum ETFs. I heard they did. I don't even know the number off the top of my head because I've been so busy this morning.
Before we went live, the Bloomberg ETF analyst said that they were already at 600 million for the day, and they said they thought it would pass. They thought it would pass $1 billion for the day
in one day. Yeah,
one day.
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy.
I think I'm excited. I'm excited the most about this kind of diversification away from spot markets in a sense, like meaning like you can trade all the time. You can go to any crypto exchange and buy Ethereum, but like. I'm excited that with these new ETFs, I think you get a new type of investor that's a little bit slower, that kind of looks at this a little more long-term as part of a strategy. It turns, I don't want to say we're not at a level of maturity yet on these. I just don't think we're there, but I think it does help ETH grow up a little bit in terms of like people are not day trading in their 401ks quite as much, in their IRAs.
Yeah.
They're not trading quite as much. And I think that's exciting because it creates a lot more holders with a lot more long-term view. And I think it's actually the same thing. We were just talking about like these kind of big things like tokenizing homes and real world assets, these big use cases. But like, it's funny because at the same time that these big narratives that again need to work for hundreds of years, at the same time, it's like, you go on X and it's Win Moon. Why is your token down 2% today? Like
Yeah.
it's this, I need my pump today. And so building in the space, on one hand, you're dealing with that, satisfy the people that are trying to cut your head off. And on the other side, build for the next 200 years. So it's really a tough, and do it in public, by the way. So it's a tough space to be in. And I think that's what's exciting about maybe these ETFs is it's a little bit away from that narrative. And it's a little bit more of, people putting a strategy together.
Yeah.
It's an allocation, it's a strategy. It's like literally sitting down with a financial planner and saying, okay, here's the 100% pie. We're going to allocate, we're going to shift, we're going to have a long-term plan.
And
it's a little more that.
If what we happen to believe comes true, right? Even a quarter of what we believe comes true, at least for Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that, that whatever percentage of a person's portfolio it is will likely become a much larger percentage of their portfolio very quickly, and people are going to care about it a lot more because, especially compared to the rest of the traditional world. I know everything is kind of correlated because of inflation and also because of liquidity reasons, but there has
it gets into a really
interesting
narrative though, right?
Yeah.
Like here we are today, and we probably are all very bullish on this space and think that the total market cap of everything combined is going way, way higher, trillions higher. And if that's the case, well, what is how much diversification should you have? What does it matter if it's all going up? Like how much risk do you want when you wake up in the morning and the project got rugged? Like how much do you want to put up with, and what allocation does that look like in a portfolio? Those same things that fall 70% also move up 150% the next day. How much do you want to sleep at night? So like there's a lot of things to consider, but I mean overall, man, this space, I don't think I've ever been more bullish. We've been in here forever.
And that's
crazy.
the thing, is it's so exciting and you see the future. And I think that it used to be this crazy, it's easier to sell products sometimes when nothing exists and you can just sell a dream, right? So today you can look at certain things like, hey, some of those dreams never happened, but we're on our way towards them. And then the actual real usage and the actual things happening today are probably beyond our wildest dreams of 5-7 years ago, but we're like used to it. The same reason why nobody's talking about stuff. We did talk about crypto and going like, wait, it didn't move and this and that, and we're thinking about it in this weird way. If we would have told ourselves 7 years ago, this is the price of Ethereum, this is the price of Bitcoin, and then we're going to be talking about it like it's not moving that much, or even say anything negative about the industry or anything, we would have been out of our minds, right? Because even in that moment, if we say, yeah, we see Bitcoin going to 250K or $1 million, the fact that we're sitting here at this price and nobody's talking about it in the news, like it's like a little blip and a little thing, and it's like,
Alon, I want to go back in the past here. I want to go back to, it was, I think, the second Crypto Invest Summit that I went to, your summit way back when. It was like the biggest one. It was huge. There was vendors out in the hallways at LA Convention Center. And it was like, what was that? 2015,
Bitcoin, that was
2016?
It was a little later. It was probably 2018. And it was when...
Was it 18?
It was, I think, right when Bitcoin, either right before or right after Bitcoin got to like 18K or something like that. Was like the peak of the time. So that 18?
I feel like it was just before the Ethereum bubble popped with all of these coins.
Maybe I see. Oh yeah, because there were all these weird coins, and yes. I remember one of the I think so, because
you go.
Sorry, our meeting let's cancel. Sorry, I've canceled the meeting, so we could go a couple more minutes. All right. So,
But like I remember walking the hallway and talking to a lot of these people that were there that had just launched their token. A lot of great thinking. A lot of great thinking. They all had the wrong timing, and like all of them.
Look,
Like
it was really, really crazy smart people that were way ahead of their time,
yes,
mixed with the a certain element of person who's going free money falling from the sky. So there's like the scams mixed in and stuff like that. So one of the best and worst things we ever did was
right.
tell people, look, we had to cover expenses to run a conference, and we didn't know which things were real, which things weren't, and not every single one, so many of the vendors, like the people who were creating booths and companies who were there, were trying to go, hey, we'll give you 10x the amount of our tokens versus US dollars if you take our token for sponsorship. And we said across the board, we will not accept a single token. You pay us in dollars or that's it, right? And because we wanted to make sure we covered expenses and stuff like that. Now, if we would have played the game along a lot of other people in our industry, we probably could have printed a ton of money from some of these things. And we would have lost some on some, but some would have been crazy because we would have known kind of also when and how they were going to pump and whatever, but we didn't play that game at all, which gave us a really, really great reputation in the industry, but also, left a lot of money on the table, right? But what ended up happening is some of those people were great builders ahead of their time, kind of died. Some of those people were scammers that over time, we all discovered. And then, but I always like to point at the people who made it through those times. Like there were people selling like blockchain ticketing solutions. The word NFT was even said by a few people behind the scenes. They're like, nobody knew what that was yet. Those things were way ahead of its time. Nothing really happened with those. But then there were some companies, and I don't know if it was at that one or what, but like things like Chainlink were getting started and whatever. And there were moments in time where anyone post, that whole bubble crash thing, there's so many people who looked at groups like Pantera, looked at like people like us in this world and would laugh at us like we're a bunch of idiots, right? And then the companies who stayed alive, who made things happen, groups like Chainlink, right? The next time things went, they outperformed Bitcoin. They like killed it. And then every follower, investor type of person would then come to us and be like, where are the deals at? You got any token deals? Tokens are a thing. Where for the last year before or longer, they were talking about how tokens are the biggest scam of all time, right? And what you learned in those things is for some use cases, we're still potentially really crazy early. We don't know if the timing is actually right. Me saying October interoperability, yes, that's going to happen with some products, but maybe it's not meaningful enough to move the industry. Maybe it's 5 years from now that happens. I hope not, right? But the companies and communities, I should say, projects, right, who don't necessarily, who plan ahead for cash management and keep their burn low and play the long game will make it through any of those cycles if they keep their eyes on the prize for when timing is better, right? And there's the pressure of the liquidity, there's a pressure of managing that token economy, but the people who actually build real products with real business models and think long are what's going to drive the industry.
I think that's the reason I brought that way back, because I remember being at your conference, is that the timing was off on all of them. And it was almost the narrative was about the token first versus the actual solution. And I think what's so exciting about right now is that it's like blockchain, whatever blockchain you're using, whatever token you have, what I see is it's sort of starting to blend into the background. It's more like UX first. We were in the Ethereum conference in ETH Denver, and it was like everyone we talked to, they use the word UX. I don't think they fully grasp what it means half the time, but like they're not it easier to use.
But remember, everyone listening, John and the rest of the Lunar Crush crew, but John is one of the best UX people in our industry by far. And you are a UX UI person pre-crypto, right? So that to you, you hold things to a much higher level, but you actually understand where it needs to go. So just everyone pay
It
attention to what John
thanks.
says.
But I mean, I think what's exciting right now is it feels like we're entering a phase of where crypto is kind of, in a sense, entering the background. And that's a really positive thing, meaning we build things that people want to use, that they want to subscribe to in some manner, they want to be a part of in some manner, they want to control the future of it in some manner. But I feel like it's kind of becoming more seamless. And I think, again, when you go back to ICO mania versus today, we have scale that's kind of reaching out. We have wallets that are not just absolutely insane to use. We have better custody solutions. We have speed. I mean, let's go back then. They were talking about gaming as being the in-app gaming was the freaking narrative that wouldn't shut up, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's going, oh yeah, in-game tokens. And then there was gambling. Gambling was going to be the big thing too. And it's like, well, why didn't everything lead with that? Why wasn't that the complete solution for crypto? Why did gaming not happen? Well, too slow, too expensive, too complicated.
Yep.
Does anyone actually game because of crypto, or do they
also
love the damn
marketing.
game?
Yeah, also
Like,
market. That's what I literally was just explaining
not
to
good
some
enough.
person. I said there hasn't been an example yet of a successful crypto game, and people got mad at me for saying that. And I go, no.
Yep.
To have,
Don't get
you
mad at
might
you.
have created a good short-term economic, incentive for people to play a game, mine the tokens, sell them immediately, and then stop playing. But people wouldn't have stopped playing if the game was great. They would have taken some market share from existing games. Nobody does it. And part of the issue, also, on top of what you just said, was also the narrative around crypto. I remember there's been a few times where mainstream ish games wanted to adopt crypto and their communities completely shit on them because at the time, crypto's bad for the environment.
Right.
You're going to indoctrinate our children into this gambling scheme. You're going to this, you're going to that. And if that would have happened, there might be the millions of more adopted users that we wished would happen. But we also shit the bed when it came to actually having a proper narrative around what it means and what it is, right? And that's changing too, right? And nothing's been built from the ground up where they actually built, like you said, an actual great game and then brought in crypto components to it instead of thinking about token first, thinking about incentives first. The thing that raised all the money for the sandbox and for Decentraland and those things, which I think are awesome things, are the same reason why it will never get adopted by the game developers, right? The fact that you have to own land in a metaverse to then build something on it is the exact opposite. Imagine telling our kids, right, John? Your kids are experiencing this stuff. I know. Imagine telling your kid before you can try building a Roblox game or participating in that economy and experimenting. First, you're going to need, even if it's $50, $100, $1,000, to buy some Roblox land to give you the opportunity to participate in that economy. That's the stupidest user experience. It's the stupidest user experience thing in the world. The people we're going to create the most value to, you're putting a roadblock in front of them by saying, hey, before you can even bring the value, you got to pay me.
Hey, Alon, here's an idea though. Before you can be a part of a subdivision, you got to go buy a lot to build a house. Do you do that?
Well, it's like saying,
you
want to hire me. You want to hire me to paint your house, right? I'm the best painter in the world. But before I can paint your house, I also have to own land in the neighborhood.
It's okay.
Right?
You can go to a cheaper subdivision though. Right?
Well,
but if you want to be in the good subdivision, you're going to buy the piece of land because that's where everybody else is.
But it doesn't, if you're the best developer in the world, people are paying you to come develop that land, or you're getting investors who want you to use it, right? If you're the greatest game developer in the world, you should be being incentivized to come. But here's the thing, we're living in a world where we're living in the creator economy where it's not necessarily the biggest, the best, the whatever. We're talking about a world where a single person or a team of 2-3 teenagers can build games in the Roblox world for practically nothing and instantly start earning thousands or millions of dollars in revenue if they hit a simple game, right? It's like a YouTuber. Imagine if every YouTuber, even the ones that only make a small living for themselves or make no living, had to put something up to just participate. It makes no sense in the current world and the current economy. And that's what all of the crypto groups have done, because they think about, they're joining this group and they go, ooh, if I do a drop, I'll do this. And why should somebody own this? Because then they'll be able to earn revenue because they'll be able to build something.
So what's their ability of transferring that game in Roblox to somebody else for ownership purposes?
Oh, you can do stuff like that, right? But you're still in their world. You're still beholden to them. But it's like the Apple, economy. Most developers and most people think it's unfair. Even after the lawsuits and they've reduced their fees and done the things, they still think it's a monopoly and it's unfair. But guess what? You would be the worst mobile developer if you just decided, I'm going to stop building for Apple, right? Because where are the users? I asked my nephew, who's now, I don't know, he's like 16 or 17 now. I asked him a few years ago. This is a few years ago. So this is like a 13-year-old had the insight. And I was like, why don't you build for this? I'll pay. I'll get you a piece of land. Build on this. And his response, after talking shit about Roblox and getting all these fees taken out and all the negative things he wanted to say to me about it, I kept asking him, why not try building somewhere else? He goes, that's where the users are. I go, but what about this? He's like, that's where the users are. And he keeps saying that over and over again. And that's it. The world is spoken, right? The economy is spoken.
Attention economy. It's an attention economy.
Right. Well, here's
John
the thing
knows better than everybody
when the users go somewhere else, the people will follow. And if you want to bring users to a new incumbent, you have to compete, right? And to make somebody pay up to compete in an economy that doesn't actually have anything. Okay, here's the last thing I want to say, because this is exactly the same analogy, but it's at a bigger scale. I did a company. My first kind of company where I quit my day job, went to an accelerator program. It was called Amplify. It was in Venice. I love those guys. They were really, really valuable to me. And I would work with them all over again if I could. Great. I launched my company. We were working out of their office. One day, when you go to those things, like with DGB, we give everyone, Google Cloud credits and AWS credits and things when you work with us, because that's how AWS and Google get customers, right? They go to the startups, they give them free credits and whatever. One day, a rep from Microsoft came to our office, gave us all brand new Microsoft phones. This is when Microsoft decided to launch an operating system for phones and compete with Apple, which was still very early days. I'm talking about 2012. This is early days for mobile anything. But mobile existed. It was a big category. People were making money, like meaningful money, in the Apple App Store. They gave us all these free Windows phones that were way more advanced than any of the Apple phones at the time. They came and the evangelist spent a whole day showing us and the tech team's programming languages used, why it's better in a million different ways. And then he made this fatal mistake. Everyone was like, oh shit, this is really cool stuff. This is way better technology. This is whatever. He goes, what's really cool about Microsoft, Microsoft's a pretty cool company, because somebody made some comment about Microsoft being like lame and old or some kind of dumb comment, like just a throwaway comment. He's like, no, Microsoft is so progressive. They're great. Look, I'm like the head evangelist for the mobile development. And they let me actually sell my mobile game in the App Store. Like, they allow me to do it. And I have the #1 game at the moment in the App Store on the Microsoft thing. And it's so cool. Just like as this side thing, I spend, a few hours a day kind of managing it. I built this game. It's a cool card game thing. People buy it for 99 cents each all day long. I'm the #1 game in the App Store. And somebody goes, holy crap, that's awesome. How much are you making? He's like, so cool. It's like a side gig for me. And I make like $1,500 a month. And we just sat there and we're like, wait, so you want us as a company, this is teams of people, to build a product to sell or distribute in your App Store, where the #1 game, the game making the most money in your whole App Store, is a side gig for somebody making $1,500 a month. That literally, from that moment, he went from the greatest cool tech, free phones that were worth like $1,000 each to everyone. Like, everyone was so stoked, to like everyone going, well, there we go. There's nothing there, right? And that's exactly what what people are trying to do with these crypto games, these crypto things. Not everybody. Some people are approaching it right, but I'm being, you know, just pointing out the flaws, right? So I think we have a way to go. UX has to actually be there, not just from a consumer standpoint, but from the actual. When you talk about UX, you're talking about the user experience, not necessarily the UI, the user interface. The user experience also means the developer experience and how they build and what they need to do
Yes.
to get there. And if it's a whole new programming language that they've never even heard of before, that's way complicated, that's a problem, right? If it's actual money spent up front to show up, and not just for the big guys, because the big guys you'll probably give for free or you'll incentivize them in some way, but for everyone, because the value doesn't come from single people anymore. It comes from communities. People need
You know,
to think this
it's
through.
funny too. Like UX isn't necessarily just UI or the product itself. Like I'll give you an example. You probably saw our announcement about where Lunar
By
Crush
the way,
has our API data in in Google's marketplace, Google Cloud. And so because there's a lot of giant companies that have a need for data, for social data, for market data, and they're not even using that alone. They're like, hey, I've got some, like, I don't know, automotive data, I've got some marine boating data, I want to like crush this all together and build a model out of it. And like there's all sort, you can't even imagine how people are using data,
Yeah.
and they're training models, they're building models, they're building user experiences on their own, they're adding data to their existing experiences. We're talking to very large customers now that are in Google Cloud Marketplace that would never, ever in a million years go to lunarcrush.com and just sign up for the API. And the reason is their infrastructure, the way that they manage their data, is within Google Cloud, and they need a solution that's within their environment to do that. So again, it's like, do we have our API data that we have a lot of customers using? Yes, through our site. Some want that assurance and that integration into Google Cloud. And again, that's UX. It's a user flow of what a customer needs and building around that versus, I don't know, like, should the button be round or square?
yeah.
Should it be at the top of the page or the bottom? Should it blink when someone hovers over it or not? What's the transition there? Like, that's design.
Yeah.
Like, and I think a lot of individuals are sort of fixated on what's that UI versus like what's the value and how exactly does that user, who is that user? How do
Who
they
are
want to
they?
access
Why
what
are
you've
they
got?
here? Yeah. Why are they
Right.
here? And
I
how
think
are
a
they going
lot
to
of
get here?
crypto is speculators, which means they actually don't even care what you have. They care about token go up. And that's a short-term like thing, because eventually some of these things are going to have immense utility, fantastic tokenomics, and they're just set up for the long term. And so it's like, but it all implies that companies, individuals think like a company that needs to survive, and you need to think about building things that people want. And Alon, your example of being where the users are, you didn't say a single word about tokenomics, not a
Yeah.
one.
Well,
So
it's
if there's a
because
token that makes it better, great. If it
the
incentivizes, great.
token can incentivize, but the problem is the only usage of a token so far has been so heavy to incentivize that it also incentivizes leaving. Or not incentive, if it's the central reason for joining, right? Because I'm going to get a token. If you can't keep them, you can't keep them, right? So, and if value of that token goes up temporarily, even, it's cool, but it also goes, I'm going to sell that token, right? Because if I just got free money from the sky and I'm the average American who doesn't have enough, like we mentioned earlier, for their savings account, then if I got $1,000 out of Sky because I joined a game and now the game doesn't hold me and I left, you're hurt by dumping and leaving, you're hurting the community. So the person who created that incentive mechanism actually hurt the game. They think it helped because they might have brought 1 million people, but if you can't hold it, you can't keep iterating, making it better and keeping people, you're done, right?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
it's it and that's that. So all of those things being said, I think it's just boils back down to the long-term thinking. And the problem is it's hard to have the long-term thinking as a community. It's easier to have it as the core team building. And it's hard for the core team to ignore the community who might be saying, how come number doesn't go up? How come this? And if you can do that properly, if you can build and you can can't completely ignore it, but not ignore it, but shield yourself from it and engage it in the right way, you build long-term, you will win eventually, right? As long as you create actual long-term incentives, things like that. By the way, so we're going to have to end the stream in a second. I just want to say, John, thank you for joining last minute. This was really, really awesome. We're going to have John back, maybe Joe also, but we're going to have them back soon because there's a whole slew of things like the Google announcement, like the buzz economy and everything else that we want to talk, the creator campaigns that we want to talk about Lunar Crush. This was really, really awesome. I appreciate you joining. Happy Bitcoin ETF day, everyone. If you're excited for that, I think it's
Ethereum.
Ethereum.
Oh, ETH ETF. See, my brain. I saw something orange pop up on my calendar right in front of me, and so there we go. You're wearing your Ethereum jersey. But thanks everyone for joining, and thank John for joining us last minute.
And
any last words?
Tuesday,
Everybody follow John at John Farjo, at Lunar Crush on Twitter. What else?
The DGB show, we're every Tuesday at 10 o'clock on Pacific time. And
we will name it one day, or maybe not. That's part of the fun. But we've just been calling it Crypto Family Hang, which is I think what it's essentially called.
Visit Lunar Crush.
I like that.
Also visit dgb.vc.
dgb.vc, all that fun stuff. Your early stage startup, please come and join us. Go to dgb.vc, sign up for the newsletter too. You'll be notified of all this stuff. And at DGB Ventures pretty much everywhere. All right, thanks everyone.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet.
Thank you.
See ya. All right, sure.